All right, it looks like we are officially live, so that's great. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Seymour Marine Discovery Center's Labside chat. It is 3 minutes before 11 a.m. Pacific time for when we get started, but we wanted to give folks the opportunity to get settled into this live stream, get excited for today's program, and to also introduce yourself in the live chat as well. We love to see where our Seymour Center supporters are tuning in from. And during today's conversation, you may also get a little shout out from Jessica and I. So go ahead and say hi in the live chat, introduce yourself, say where you're watching from. We love to see it. I think we get supporters tuning in from all over California, which is really great. Also just right in our backyard in Santa Cruz, California. But I know folks also tune in from all over the United States. We got some folks from, New Mexico, Texas, Utah, Arizona. So go ahead and say hi. And, the Seymour Center is expanding our reach across the United States. All right. Awesome. And it looks like we have a few folks. It looks like Jacob from Santa Cruz is joining us today. Hello and welcome. We're so happy that you're here. Awesome. And as we're waiting, so we'll get started in just about a minute. We'll get started in just about a minute, give folks the opportunity to jump into this live. But as folks are starting to tune in, go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. And, I also want to plug that the Seymour Center is really, really close to almost 100 subscribers on YouTube. So if you're watching this and not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, please go ahead and do so we can get up to 100. It's just a fun goal that we have. So please help us out with that as well. All right. Awesome. It's so great to see everyone joining. We'll get started in just about 30 seconds. All right. So it looks like it is 11 o'clock on the dot over here in Santa Cruz, California. So we will officially get started with today's program. Hi, everyone, and thank you for tuning into the Seymour Marine Discovery Center's Labside chat. This is a very special Labside chat this week because it is also Elephant Seal Celebration Week at the Seymour Center. So today's Labside chat is like a special elephant seal specific conversation, and we're so excited for it. So if you have watched a Labside chat, welcome back. We're super happy that you're here. But if this is the first time you are joining a Labside chat and tuning in for a conversation, today's program is really a great opportunity to have a Q&A discussion with a scientist from UC Santa Cruz to really show how scientific research plays a role in the understanding and conservation of the world's oceans. And today, not only is it Elephant Seal Celebration Week, which is a great time to join, but we have an incredible guest today, and I'm so excited to introduce her. And I can tell that everyone watching at home is really excited that she's here today too. But we are joined by Jessica Kendall-Bar, who is a Ph.D. candidate in the Ecology and Evolutionary Biology department at UC Santa Cruz. And we'll be chatting about marine mammal sleep patterns, brain function, and even throw in some interesting tidbits about northern elephant seals along the way. So Jessica, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for that introduction.
Yeah, and so I have so many questions lined up for you that were all submitted in advance by community members, and I hope that we're able to get to them all because there are a lot. But for everyone watching at home, not to worry if you did not have the opportunity to submit a question in advance for Jessica. Please feel free to use the YouTube live chat to submit your questions as well, and we'll try to answer as many as possible that we can in the time allowed. So Jessica, I hope you're ready. We got a rapid fire question round for you. Okay, awesome. So Jessica, we've been advertising your talk as learning more about sleep patterns in marine mammals. And that is so cool because I know absolutely nothing about sleep in marine mammals. And having your expertise is good because I am so ready to learn about sleep patterns in marine mammals. To kick us off, can you tell us a little bit about what type of questions you're trying to answer with your research?
Yeah, so my research looks at sleep patterns, specifically in northern elephant seals. So great that it's Northern Elephant Seal Celebration Week. And I'm really interested in learning how these animals that are sleeping in an environment that's totally different than your bed, the Northern Pacific Ocean, how they're able to get enough rest while they're migrating, halfway to Japan and back for over 7 months at sea, how they're able to sleep enough to survive, because, I know myself, I get a little bit grumpy if I get less than 8 hours. So I'm curious as to how these elephant seals are surviving on, it seems like at most they might be just still and potentially sleeping for at most an hour a day. And that's broken up into 6 little cat naps. And that's assuming that, the amount of time that they're spending sort of in bed, like trying to sleep, behaviorally still, is all equivalent to the amount of electrophysiological sleep in the brain that they're actually getting, which is probably not the case. So I'm really interested in sort of seeing how much sleep they're actually getting when they're in the wild, and hopefully eventually be able to actually measure sleep in an animal that's diving in the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, that's really incredible. And so before we dive into figure out how you study this, because that seems very complicated, I want to back up and talk a little bit about the migration that you mentioned, because that seems really interesting and something about elephant seal natural history and their behavior that really plays into your research. Can you elaborate a little bit on their migration and their cycles and why they're going out to halfway to Japan?
Yeah, so actually right now, our research group, led by the Costa Lab researchers, we just finished a round of instrument deployments on adult females that are going out after the end of the breeding season, which is about finishing up right now. And they're going out to sea to replenish the resources that they just spent, feeding their pups that are now very plump and all over the beach. It's very cute. So they're out replenishing their resources for a couple months. So this is a shorter migration. And then they'll be coming back in probably May, June to do their molt, where they basically shed an entire layer of fur and skin. And then after they do that on land, they'll be going out for a much longer migration. And that's the one that's, up to 7 or 8 months even. And they're going halfway to Japan and back in some cases. Some stay coastal. They all have different strategies, but they're all able to come back in preparation for next breeding season, where they're going to give birth and have to feed their pups while they're on land for, a very stressful 2 months. And yeah, so I'm interested in sort of when they're spending that time at sea, how much are they sleeping? And then related to that is like, how much sleep do they have to catch up on when they get back to land? And I mean, if you've been out to Año Nuevo, it's sort of a mix. There's lots of sleepy elephant seals out there, but there's also tons of activity and tons of disturbance. So I think it's a really fascinating question. And it's obviously so different from humans because, we just have the same cycle every day, but they're sort of going through these larger cycles throughout the year.
Yeah, and when you're looking at elephant seals out at sea and trying to figure out, how they're sleeping, was there any background research that you could rely on that, like, we kind of knew what was happening? Because how did you formulate this research question that you're working on? It's really interesting.
Yeah, so I am definitely not the first person to think about this question. The Costa Lab has been involved in research for the past, 30 to 40 years almost on the elephant seals here. So we know a lot about what they're doing, and we've also deployed a whole bunch of instruments that give us time depth records of their migrations. And we've been able to categorize sort of 4 main dive types. Dives that go to the bottom of the ocean and sort of stay flat along the bottom. Dives that are transit dives where they're sort of U-shaped and they're probably swimming the whole time. And then there's foraging dives where they dive down to a certain depth and they eat a bunch and then they come back. And then there's a last type of dive, which we're not exactly sure why they do this, but we think that it looks suspiciously like the opportunity to sleep, at least. So basically what they're doing is they're diving down to about 600 feet below the surface, and then they sometimes turn upside down and they just drift for 5 to 10 minutes, and then they turn right back, right side up, and then they swim back to the surface. And like I was saying before, they seem to only do this, a couple times in little bouts throughout the day. And even if that was like 100% of that time spent drifting equals sleep, they would still only be getting about an hour of sleep a day. So that information we can get just by looking at the dive records. But then in my research, I want to go one step further, and I want to actually look inside the brain to see if we can figure out if they're actually exhibiting those sleep patterns when they're in similar situations. I haven't been able to go out and record it on a diving seal, but we have last April, we were able to do the first recording of marine mammal sleep in the wild. And we were able to record sleep, electrophysiological sleep. So basically listening to the brain of a seal out in the wild using completely non-invasive techniques for the first time.
Wow. And what did you find?
So we instrumented 2 animals. The first one was what we call a super wiener, which means that it received a whole full 2 doses of milk from 2 different moms. So it suckled from one mom, and then it decided it just didn't have enough and went to a second mom. So it was massive. The animal was about 200 kilograms when we did the recording of this animal's sleep. So that's about 400 pounds. We found that basically she slept mostly in these naps during low tide. And sometimes she would sleep on land, sometimes she would sleep in sort of shallow puddles. Often she would be upside down, sort of drifting in shallow water. And we also had a tiny little video camera attached to her, so we're able to see all of her friends doing the same thing. So it's really amazing. It's really the first study of marine mammal sleep where we're able to observe sleep in the context in which it evolved. So we can see, why is it important for these animals to be able to sleep while holding their breath at 600 feet? And sort of how do they develop those skills over time from, just being born to being an adult female, doing these long migrations.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you said that too, is that when you're looking at that like 4th dive, right? And they're going down to about 600 feet. And, it didn't even occur to me, like, yes, this is a marine mammal. They're in the ocean. They have to hold their breath. So holding their breath while like sleeping, that it's something so incredible. And I'm so glad that you're studying that and telling us some of your findings. So we got a really great question in the YouTube live chat from Keenan asking about if you have discovered a difference in sleep patterns from when northern elephant seals are out in the open ocean versus when they are hauled up on shore as like quality of sleep. So I don't know if that's something that you have worked on yet, but it's a really great question.
Yeah, so we haven't necessarily recorded their sleep. Again, we just sort of have this proxy of when they might be sleeping, because we know, the animals are spending X amount of time per dive just drifting and not stroking. So maybe they're sleeping 100% of that time, but as I said, I'm certainly not sleeping 100% of the time that I'm spending still in my bed. So that might not be a one-to-one relationship, but we are able to see, okay, maybe 1 hour per day in the form of 6 10-minute naps, compared to some of the sleep studies we did here at the lab. We saw that the animals were spending 19 hours stationary and almost 10 hours in slow wave sleep per day. So that's a huge difference, right? Between the amount of time they're resting when they're out at sea versus the amount of time they're resting when they're on land.
Yeah, and that, oh, wow. So we also got another great question from Katie in the YouTube live chat, who is a previous Seymour Center employee. So hi, Katie, it's great to see you. And Katie is asking if you have done any research on whether or not ocean noise could potentially affect the sleep patterns of the seals.
Yeah, so we're definitely looking at different anthropogenic stressors and the potential of those stressors to affect sleep patterns. One of the ways that we're doing that is we're comparing the sleep studies that we performed here at the lab to the sleep studies that we will perform in the wild environment. And we can sort of compare those to get a sense of how the anthropogenic environment of the lab was affecting the animals. And then in the future, we may be able to sort of do playback experiments where we play back anthropogenic noise and see how these animals respond. But what's really fundamental first is just to get a sense of how they actually sleep, because we really don't know. And as I was saying, these are some of the first studies using non-invasive methods. It is the first study of marine mammal sleep using non-invasive methods. And then in addition to that, we just need to characterize their sleep patterns in a natural environment in the wild. And then we can start asking about how we might be messing with that balance.
Yeah, so this research, it just sounds like it's so new, and we're just learning so much just about kind of like that, I guess, quote unquote baseline, just really figuring out how these marine mammals sleep in a natural environment. So that is really cool that you are on this cutting edge research. And so we got a question asking about sleep patterns across different marine mammals. So I know you work on northern elephant seals, but do marine mammals have different sleep patterns across species? So like, do northern elephant seals, do they have different sleep patterns than, let's say, an Atlantic bottlenose dolphin?
Yeah, so bottlenose dolphins sleep in a completely different way to elephant seals and also to ourselves. They basically turn off half of their brain at a time in this process called unihemispheric slow wave sleep. And that allows them to always keep on half of their brain so that they can keep one eye open to monitor for predators. It also allows them to swim around and breathe continuously. So that's how dolphins sleep. And then fur seals and sea lions, so the otariids, a different group from the group that elephant seals are in. Those fur seals and sea lions sleep different depending on their environment. So they'll sleep like a dolphin when they're in water. They'll sleep with half of their brain at a time. And then when they get on land, they switch to sleeping like humans with both halves of their brain at a time. And so that is like such an interesting paradigm to look at and compare how humans sleep versus how dolphins sleep. And so one of my first research papers was looking at fur seals and trying to learn from basically how they're sleeping, switching from unihemispheric slow wave sleep to bilateral sleep, and trying to gain some insight about what adaptations they need to do that. And also it helps us understand more about sleep in ourselves and the function of sleep. If these animals are able to survive by sleeping with half their brain at a time, dolphins actually have absolutely no REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement sleep, or the stage of sleep where you normally dream. which we think is so critical to cognitive processes and intelligence. But if dolphins, very intelligent creatures, don't need REM sleep, that can maybe help us maybe see REM sleep from a different perspective and the function of different types of sleep from a different perspective. So then I guess to finish up, northern elephant seals only sleep like humans. Well, that is to say, they're sleeping with both halves of their brain at a time. But like you said before, elephant seals have to hold their breath when they sleep. So they're holding their breath as like a normal way to sleep. Whereas in humans, I don't know if you've heard of sleep apnea or obstructive sleep apnea. So it's a pathological condition in humans where if we hold our breath during the time that we're asleep, we could abruptly wake up and it can disrupt our sleep patterns and cause some pretty severe health consequences. So also looking at northern elephant seal sleep can tell us a lot about human health and the function of sleep in humans.
Yeah, and so what I'm hearing is that we can learn so much from these marine mammals and how it can be applicable to human health and how, just how much we can learn from them. That's really incredible. So Jessica, you are so passionate about what you're doing, and what you're doing is, I just find it so interesting. And I know I keep saying that over and over again, but I really do. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got so passionate about what you do? Like, how did you know you were always going to be a scientist and work on sleep patterns of marine mammals? Or did it just kind of like, you just had like a spark one day and you're like, nope, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life?
Yeah, I think, it's like a very direct plug to the Seymour Center, but when I was 11 years old, I think my spark was attending the Ocean Explorers program, where I actually came face to face with a marine mammal for the first time. I met Primo and Puka from Terry Williams' lab, and I was just fascinated by, these large brains and these intelligent creatures that were in front of me. And that was definitely my spark. That got me interested in dolphins. I found out that they slept with half of their brain, and I was like, wow, that's cool. And then I went to undergrad. I was still interested in sleep and neuroscience. So I was working in a human sleep lab where we were looking at sleep deprivation and the effects on human health. And then, I still had this interest in marine mammals in the background and in their sleep. So I think I was just looked up a paper on Google Scholar about cetacean sleep. And then I emailed the first two authors on that paper. And I actually got the opportunity to go to Russia with them to study sleep in fur seals. So that was just like an incredible sequence of events that allowed me to sort of pursue my passion, which is, studying how marine mammals sleep and figuring out how their brains work, because they're so similar to ours, but also so different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so do you have any advice, like for any aspiring marine scientists or anybody thinking about pursuing science as a career? Do you have any advice for them as they pursue this career path?
Yes, I think two things that were really, really critical for me. First, I was able to find my topic, my passion within marine mammal science. So you're not just coming to a potential advisor and saying, I love dolphins, because the truth is a lot of people love dolphins, and it's not a thing we should be ashamed of, but it's definitely not our leading point. We should lead with the topic that really fascinates us. And for me, that's sleep and neuroscience. But for someone else, it might be something different. And then I pursued that topic. I got some background skills with that topic at Berkeley, where there's no marine mammals to work with. And then the other thing that I would recommend is just perseverance. So sending that cold email, and then maybe sending a follow-up email 5 weeks later when you don't hear a response. I can't tell you the number of emails that I've sent that went unresponded to. And you should just keep trying and not give up. Grad school involves a whole lot of perseverance. So go for what you're passionate about.
That is great advice. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Jessica, I also know that you are an incredible science communicator in a couple different types of mediums and platforms. And so we actually got a really great question in the live chat asking about the workstation that is behind you. And so I was hoping, I know I'm familiar with some of your work that you do, but can you talk a little bit about how you are communicating science through kind of a combination of art and combining that with scientific research?
Yeah, so it's definitely something that I pursued alongside my studies in the past couple of years at UC Santa Cruz. I've been really fortunate to have advisors, Dan Costa and Terry Williams, that both really heavily support involvement in the arts. They're both artists themselves, so I think that they're able to recognize the value that art has in science communication. I just read an article in Nature this morning about how collaboration between scientists and artists is not just about communicating science, it's also helpful to see things from a new perspective. So I'm working right now with another scientist that was recently featured on the Labside chat, Mike Beck, and I'm doing science communication for his lab, and I do animations, 2D, 3D, infographics to help communicate his science. I'm also working with some elephant seal researchers, actually, and looking at their response to disturbance. And I'm doing a 3D animation of elephant seal swimming patterns in response to a disturbance, so that we can better visualize the data, because it's really overwhelming when you're looking at squiggles on a screen. I would know, I look at a lot of squiggles for the sleep data that I am analyzing. So I think visualizing data is a new passion of mine, and I think it's so important for us as scientists. I mean, we spend so much time on figures. So that's sort of where I'm focusing my energy. I'm leading a collective of students right now that are in astronomy and astrophysics and gaming and playable media, and also EEB, Ecology and Evolutionary Biology. And we're working together to create data visualizations to help communicate science. So definitely very passionate about that as well.
Yes, and it clearly shows the way that you talk about it. And so thank you so much for sharing that. And I only have a few minutes left with you. It's crazy to think about how fast time flies. But I wanted to talk to you about your field experience and working with these northern elephant seals. And so can you give us a really quick description about what it's like working in the field with these elephant seals, and where exactly in the world that you are working with them?
Yeah, so we are, again, very fortunate to have our local colony of elephant seals just up the road from us at Año Nuevo State Park. So the work that I do in collaboration with the Costa Lab and our brilliant team of researchers, we've been going out there. We've been able to continue our research despite COVID, with a bunch of protocols and precautions in place. But that adds the fun challenges of trying to communicate over a harem of elephant seals with your N95 mask and your nitrile gloves, and so we're able to stay safe out there. But there's definitely been some exciting weather this quarter, and that's made the breeding season procedures a little bit difficult. The other day we had rain and wind and sand all at the same time. So I was trying to perform an ultrasound on the adult female that we were working with. And we were, positioning the ultrasound. I have to look at a smartphone and type in all of these labels. And there were males, very worked up because it's the end of the breeding season. It's their last chance to sort of make a final attempt at a female, and so they're sort of running around behind us, and I'm here trying to work on my ultrasound as well while keeping track of everything else. So yeah, it's been really fun to work with the incredible team of researchers in the Costa Lab, and to do research so close to home, just like 35 minutes north of here.
Definitely, man. Your advice for people watching at home who wants to pursue science as a career, never give up. It sounds like that advice also applies to working in the field. Just never give up despite any conditions that you are faced with. Mm-hmm. Oh man. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Jessica. So I have one last question for you, and it's my favorite question that I ask every scientist that comes on to this Labside chat program. So I want to know, what is your absolute favorite part of your job?
Let's see. I mean, it sounds a little bit cheesy, but I've lived my whole life wondering about what animals do when I go home and I go to bed, or like the weather's bad, and I stay home, and I'm thinking about these, elephant seals or whatever out in the ocean, migrating or doing whatever they're doing. And I think it's just so amazing for me to be able to peer into their lives. And it gives me a chance to, I think, share my love for the complexity of these creatures and their amazing adaptations. And it gives me a little portal into their worldview and their perspective. So I think that's definitely my favorite part, is being able to sort of eavesdrop on these animals' minds and what's going on in there.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Jessica. This has been an absolute pleasure talking with you and asking you a bunch of different questions. But we are unfortunately out of time, believe it or not. And so, do you have a place online or social media or a website where folks can go to learn more about you or your research?
Yep. So I have my own personal website, that is jessiekb.com. And I have a Twitter that I'm trying to maintain, that is AM Kendall-Bar. And then I have an Instagram with all of my art and science communication projects. That's jessiekb_art.
Awesome. Well, I just shared all of those links in the YouTube live chat, so folks can go and check out your research and your art and what you're up to. I have to say, your Twitter profile is kind of the place to be. So if you are a Twitter person, I would definitely suggest following you, because it's really fun to see what you're up to. And so that is, again, all the time that we have. I just want to send a big thank you to everyone that tuned in today and watched from home. We are so excited to continue celebrating elephant seals all week long. There's still a few days left, so please join us for these last couple days. You can find more information either in the link that I just dropped in the live chat, or you can go to our website, seymourcenter.ucsc.edu. All the details are right there for you. I also just need to say that everyone that tuned in today, you are all the reason why the Seymour Center is able to put on these free programs to the public. So if you are in the position, I encourage you, or I ask you that you consider to please either donate or become a member with the Seymour Center, so we can continue these Labside chat programs well into the future. And so with that, that's all we have for today. Thank you all again, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.